Let's say that you have a friend or family member, somebody who is near and dear to you who is autistic or maybe has Asperger syndrome, which is a form of autism. And this person has a meltdown. Now, meltdown is kind of hard to describe, but if you are an individual with autism, you know very well what a meltdown is. And as a person with Asperger syndrome, I used to have meltdowns relatively frequently, like almost every day or several times a week. And, you just get into this mindset where you're just kind of out of control. Now, my meltdowns usually don't last very long, and typically I have a little bit of control, enough control, for example, if I'm driving a car, it doesn't impair me at all. But um, it's just those moments where I don't want to call it a blackout because it's not totally blackout, but your mind is not where it is supposed to be. So it's just like everything comes together, converges like a vortex in your mind, like a tornado in your mind, all at once. And typically, what will happen is, at least in my case, they don't last very long. We're talking about a matter of seconds, less than a minute. Other people have meltdowns, I think, that last much longer. So each individual is different. So let's say that you have a friend who's has Asperger syndrome or who is autistic and they have a meltdown. What should you do? We got 6 ideas, 6 suggestions, and these are based on life experience. I'm self-taught. These are things that I've experienced in life that I've learned through self-study, and I just want to share with you so maybe you can help or be of help to the autistic person in your life. And number one, I think, is probably the most important, and that is be patient. When a person has a meltdown, it does not last forever. Usually, it will be a few minutes at the longest. In my case, as I said, it's seldom even a minute because I'm very aware that I'm having a meltdown and I think through it really quick. And I'm thinking, I'm having a meltdown. And I just take a deep breath, pause, and I get rid of it. It's kind of simple for me. Others, it's not so simple. So you got to be careful when you're dealing with these people to just be patient with them. Because this meltdown is not the normal them. It is not the usual, typical them. This is not how they always act, and they're going to come out of it. Think of, this may not be a good analogy, but I'm going to use it anyhow. Think of somebody who is having a nightmare. And what people typically do is they see someone sleeping and it's obvious they have a nightmare. They're tempted to wake the person up to get them, release them from the nightmare. But psychologists say that's the wrong thing to do, or some psychologists do, because the person will come out of the nightmare and they will forget it. But if you wake them up, they will remember it. So the best thing to do is just leave them alone, be patient with them, and it'll go away. Maybe that is a good analogy. Number two is be calm. So you're being patient, but what you want to do is you want to model calmness to the person having the meltdown. So, we do affect other people. The way that I like to say it is, when one dog barks, all the dogs bark. When one person throws a temper tantrum, people react a lot of times with their own temper tantrums. How is it that people get into fights? Well, it's because one person got mad and triggered another person to get mad. How is it that people have brawls? You have a bunch of people fighting at once. People typically normally don't do that. Well, one person triggered another person who triggered another person, and they're all fighting. So when a person is having a meltdown, you want to do just the opposite because your behavior does affect other people. Calmness makes other people calm. Years ago, I was working with a guy. This is a man probably 35, 40 years ago, and I was trying to earn extra money. This is actually before I started my business, and had a guy I knew that had a lawn care business, so to make extra money, I would go with him to help him mow lawns. And because I'm a person with Asperger syndrome, I tend to be low-key. Flat effect is what psychologists call that. And this guy mentioned to me that he didn't call it flat effect, but he said that I had a calming effect on him just by virtue of the fact that I wasn't mad all the time or wasn't tense or anxious all the time. At least that's the way I came across. So the point being that if you're with a person who is having a meltdown, affect him by being calm. And your calmness will affect the other person. They may resist it if if they want to have their meltdown. Somebody throwing a temper tantrum, I don't think anybody wants to, but if somebody is throwing a temper tantrum because they're trying to get people's attention, they may resist your calmness because they know they're being manipulated. But a person with Asperger syndrome or autism who is having a meltdown, chances are they're not going to resist it. It's definitely going to have a calming effect on them, just you being calm. Number 3 is part of that is to speak quietly if you speak at all. So whatever comes out of your mouth should be very calming, very soothing. Anything that you say, any words that you say. And I've seen this before where people with severe autism would start behaving erratically, and whoever was with them would try to control them. And all that did was make them more erratic because they became more anxious. Sometimes the best thing to do, if they're not hurting themselves and they're not hurting anyone else or anything else, just stand back and give them a few minutes, let them settle down. And part of doing that is to don't participate, but to speak quietly. Don't reflect them, but allow them to reflect you. One of the big mistakes that I think people make when they see someone having a meltdown is they are affected. The dog barks, so the other dog barks. Well, you want to do it the other way. You be the second dog who doesn't bark. And so the first dog, why am I barking? Is that a bad analogy? Maybe, I don't know. But I think you get the point. Number 4 is don't contact them. By that I mean don't touch them. When a person is having a meltdown, if it's a person with autism or Asperger syndrome, chances are they don't like to be touched, with very few exceptions. I mean, I think everybody likes to be touched now and again, but when a person is having a meltdown, they're hypersensitive. And if they have autism, they probably don't like that contact. So don't contact them. Don't touch them. Trying to restrain them, well, you could get them in a bear hug and wrestle them to the floor if you want to, but how is that going to help? You're just participating in the meltdown. Now you're both having a meltdown. So, if they're not hurting themselves, not hurting anything or anyone else, the thing to do is just don't contact them at all. Just leave them alone. They'll come out of it. Number 5 is, we just touched on this, but restraint is very seldom necessary. Now, I've seen cases where, there was a story in the news a couple years ago where I think it was like a 5-6-year-old kid was at school having a meltdown, and the police were called because the staff of the school couldn't control this little 6-year-old, or they didn't want to. So they called the police because they didn't know what to do. So the police put restraints on the little kid, more so that to prevent him from hurting himself and others. Maybe it was a girl, I don't remember. But by and large, that type of restraint is just not necessary. So, no handcuffs, no bear hugs, no get them in a headlock, no whatever no grabbing their arms or hands and trying to control them. Because, again, as I said earlier, when you do that, you're just part of the meltdown. You're having your own meltdown. Now there's 2 of you. One dog barks. Number 6 is this, providing them with information is probably not useful at the point in time of a meltdown. So you're trying to reason with a person, right? Well, when you're having a meltdown, you're not being reasonable, so you can't reason with an unreasonable person. There is nothing logical, rational about a meltdown, in my opinion. It's just irrational behavior. So you're trying to bring them back into a state of rational thinking. They can't hear it. They don't get it. It's, they're just... they're deaf, if you will, to that information. Now, maybe once they're out of it, they can go to a qualified counselor, somebody who's certified, who has a license or whatever, and has the education to deal with this sort of thing. That information is useful. But typically, most of us who don't have those qualifications probably be better off not to try to talk to the narcissist and give him a lot of information other than what may be absolutely necessary for his or her safety and the safety of others who may be nearby. If you want to keep talking about this, let's do it. All you got to do is click one of the two rectangles that you see on the screen, and our conversation will continue. But if not, thanks for stopping by, and let us know in the comments about your experiences, and we'll see y'all next time.